And I described James Byrne as Susan's new friend. That's not quite true, but we're going to get to that in a moment. Let's welcome James Byrne, who is a partner at Sustainable Ventures. So welcome, James. Now, we're going to be talking here about a new partnership that's evolving between Sustainable Ventures and the City Council. And Susan, I think I'm not the only person in the room who regularly reads the Guardian blind date column, right? I imagine there's somebody else in the room who reads that. Do people know what I'm talking about? Right, where you start with what was your expectations and what was yours, and way down at the bottom it says, would you ever meet again? So, Susan, when you met James, what were your expectations? What is the council looking for, or what were you looking for when you found the beginnings of a partnership with Sustainable Ventures?
So we knew that in Glasgow we have a potentially really strong climate tech sector, that it is emerging. It's spinning out of our universities, and it is absolutely one of our coming key strength sectors. But there were certain elements that were required to really catalyse that opportunity. We needed a kind of community of expertise around that, the ability to create an ecosystem of support and connection between all of these emerging businesses and innovations and innovation entrepreneurs. And we needed a place, a physical place where they could find the opportunity to locate and then to grow and to do so within the context of that ecosystem. And they needed investment, venture capital and other kinds of investment directed towards those businesses where and when they needed it. So when my colleagues in the economic development team in Glasgow told me about Sustainable Ventures, who they had met with, and I think we met. I met you, James, during Scottish Cities Week, which the Scottish Cities Alliance has organised in London for the past sort of 3 Januaries. I then went down to meet James and some of his colleagues in County Hall in London to see the work that they've done on the top floor of County Hall. And it is absolutely amazing. It genuinely, we came away knocked out by it, and we're like, we want one of those. We want one of those in Glasgow, and we need one of those in Glasgow. And more importantly, we need Glasgow to be the place where that happens, not just in Scotland, but the next place in the UK. And as it happened, we have a building. Sustainable Ventures have expertise in taking on some quite challenging space. The old top floor of County Hall in London was not derelict, but certainly hadn't been used for a long time when they moved in, and it's a completely amazing space now. The Lighthouse, who all of you from Glasgow will know, that absolutely totemic Charles Rennie Mackintosh building in Mitchell Lane, but a challenging building, in terms of what it's able to host and its capacity for hosting for modern uses, if you like. Sustainable Ventures were not only willing but eager to take on the Lighthouse as a location for recreating the kind of work that they've done, and that kind of incredible breadth of ecosystem of climate tech companies of different sizes at different stages of growth, as a hub and a focus for investors who are interested in supporting that kind of business. They know where to go and where they're going to find them, and a mutual support network of expertise among those businesses as well, to recreate what they've done in London, in Glasgow, just fantastic opportunity. So the work that we've done since in building that partnership, in making sure that we do our bit on the side of the City Council around things like heads of terms of the building, all that kind of technical and legal stuff, which doesn't always move very quickly. We've tried to move as quickly as possible so that we can match Sustainable Ventures' ambitions and aspirations as much as possible. And opportunities that can flow from that. So Glasgow has been named as, although Aberdeen has the headquarters for GB Energy, Glasgow has already been named as the place where the innovation function of GB Energy should be located. And what could be better timing than the opportunity to say to GB Energy, look at the synergy here, where we in the city, along with a partner in Sustainable Ventures, are literally creating a location which will be dedicated to developing innovation in climate technology and in the whole range of stuff. All of the things that were coming up on that word cloud, every single one of those things, the potential to step up our responses, not just in Glasgow, but our ability to respond to these challenges across the UK and indeed globally, could be happening right in the heart of Glasgow city centre, and GB Energy could be part of supporting that.
Brilliant. Thank you, Susan. Now, James, in this blind date analogy, what were you looking for and what were you bringing?
So, we set up in 2011, and our aim was to address climate change and resource scarcity, but to do it through commercial solutions. And that sounds a very simple thing, but we were recognising at the time that lots of businesses were founded on grants, and that is not scalable, the impact is not scalable, and it doesn't deliver economic returns. So what were we looking for? Well, we were looking for a partner with a city, and that builds off the way that we've developed in the past. We've needed to combine together a range of quite different partners to do the ambitious things that we've done. So in London, to do County Hall, we had a very long partnership and still do with Lambeth Council, but it allowed us to then not a property owner, but to allow us to bring together other partners around that partnership. So property owners, social impact investors, other key stakeholders, corporates, to convene around it and actually make that particular project viable at the time. It was extremely difficult to do it during a pandemic and requiring a significant amount of capital in a very risky project, but it's come to fruition. And that's only one thing that we do, and maybe we'll talk about a bit more about it in a minute, but the impact of that, and I think it was nice to hear you those complimentary words, Susan, to have now got to a point of maturity as one space where we've got 665 sustainable organisations co-located there. It's one of the highest densities, if not the highest density in the world, of organisations. The interactions that you get within that are quite unique. We have 40,000 plus visitors a year, very specific, specialised, 400 events that we put on and host there. And those interactions that create are critical for creating some of the language that was used earlier, the kind of hyper, super collaboration. You've got to get people together, and it has to be in city centres. You have to get those densities to create that collaboration.
Wonderful. Now, there's immediately a question that's arisen from the group. I'm going to ask you some more, but perhaps you could say something about this, James, and then Susan, it'd be great to have you comment. But so what's the timeline from here to get to the point where this presence at the lighthouse will be open and functioning? And then, we'll talk obviously about what the long-term view of success is, but where are we in the cycle now? Do you want to start?
I'd probably preface this with our previous historical track record of property, which is indicative of property. Yeah. So it took us about 5 or 6 years to open County Hall, and we've done 6 different spaces before that over a 10-year period to accumulate into that. So it's property, it takes a long time, particularly when we're talking about a grade A listed building, and Council's 2-star listed. So it's always challenging under those circumstances, and to combine together those kind of unique stack of capital you need to take different types of risk and do it. So that's context. The answer to your question is we've made exceptional progress already. The partnership's growing. It's now about building the other partners around that partnership to slot in different bits of funding to allow us to open that and think about how we scale it over time. It's a substantial building. It's even bigger than our space in London is. That's the level of ambition and the belief we have in Scotland and in Glasgow as the kind of lighthouse, the green leading lighthouse of that activity. So it will take time. The question is how do you scale that over a long period of time? To get to maturity, you're talking a number of years before it will feel as vibrant as we all want. And therefore, there's lots of other activities that we will be doing around that to build that momentum and to draw all those other organisations in, of which Susan touched on some of them before.
So let me, if I may, just rehearse my understanding of what you both said, and then Susan, I'm going to ask you to comment on what you think the council's role is to really make it happen. But what I understand you're doing is that you are going to animate and seed a climate tech cluster here in Glasgow that's world class. There'll be a physical presence in the lighthouse, but it will be an ecosystem, a community, a network that operates at many scales, including across the city and the city region, but it'll have international dimensions as well. Susan is working hard to bring in key national players like GB Energy's R&D centre and other things. I'm assuming that big energy companies like Chris's at E.ON and others are becoming aware or will be becoming aware of all of this. And essentially, you're on the road to building a world-class cluster that has a particular home in an iconic building. And it might take 4 or 5 years, however long it takes, before the building can open. But building the cluster begins now. What did I get wrong? What did I get right? What would you add, Susan?
I think that is absolutely right. And James used the word momentum, which I think is really important. The building is the culmination of this process in many ways, and the occupation of the building once the work is done. And that the lighthouse needs quite significant capital investment. So that's one of the reasons why it has been a challenging building for quite a long number of years. So we need to corral that capital investment and different sources of that, but also bring in those partners over time. But the creation of the ecosystem doesn't require the building. No. And in many ways, the expectation of the creation of the lighthouse as this particular space will be a catalyst for growing that ecosystem and attracting the kinds of businesses that we're talking about to Glasgow, or encouraging them to grow in Glasgow from existing innovation ideas that are happening within our universities and further education sector, for example. So we know that the seeds are there. We've got the opportunity to continue to grow those seeds, to continue to build the sector in the knowledge that something is coming that will particularly give them that focus, give them that opportunity. If I could use an analogy, a real world analogy, just towards the end of last year, we opened the new Govan-Partick footbridge, or active travel bridge in Glasgow. Many of you will know about it. I hope many of you have crossed it in one direction or the other. A crossing between Govan and York Hill and Partick on the north of the river, in a place where there hasn't been one for the best part of a century, and a reconnecting of those communities, and particularly a reconnection of Govan, which is a community with historically deeply embedded levels of deprivation and poverty, a classic post-industrial riverside community. But long before the bridge actually opened, the prospect of the bridge being built was a catalyst for regeneration, for new homes in Govan, for the development of the Glasgow Riverside Innovation District led by the University of Glasgow around the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital. All of that developed in advance in the knowledge that the bridge was coming and that connectivity was going to be in place that would then really deliver on the potential of that investment. So there's something very similar. The infrastructure is really, really important, but the prospect of the infrastructure and the commitment to delivering that infrastructure is equally important in catalysing what's there already.
Great. Thank you, Susan. Now, James, I'm going to ask you just to say a little bit, for those in the audience who don't know, what are the range of activities that are included in climate tech, just so that we've got that clear? What kinds of companies are we talking about doing what kinds of things?
Green economy and climate tech encompasses a lot of things. I mean, ideally, it would be everything.
Yeah.
That would be a much better economy. So, you know, we've got specialities from a kind of industry perspective in energy, buildings, retrofit, mobility. Then from a technology perspective, materials, you know, energy systems, AI, and a range of different areas. So that they would all be included in climate tech. Ultimately, we're trying to grow high growth businesses that scale that impact.
So it sounds like, again, I'm checking what I've understood, there's hardware, there's software, there's applications, there's services, could be manufacturing by the sounds of it. There's certainly new kinds of systems and platforms that you can put into buildings or transport systems or everything else. And so some of these companies will be companies that will induce a manufacturing requirement. Others will produce a whole series of services and subscriber opportunities. Some will be servicing consumers. Some will be servicing big companies, some of which are in the room. Is that right? I'm just checking, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a good question that's come in here, and we're going to try to pick these up now. So what level of investment is going to be made here? And I think I want to say what types of investment. And maybe, James, you could say a little bit about the types of investment that you're bringing, but Susan, you could also talk about the investment that the council's bringing. Maybe you should start, and then James, and we'll get a sense of what the two types are.
So, I mean, I think not just the council, but the Glasgow City region has moved into a space of really strategic, evidence-driven and data-driven investment in some of the key clusters and key sectors in the city. And increasingly we're being supported by government in being able to do that. So the Innovation Accelerator, more recently the investment zone. We've used our City Region Intelligence Hub, which I think, you know, I'm confident in saying is unrivaled in the UK in terms of the quality of data and knowledge that provides for us on the city and city region economy and where our real sectoral strengths are, where those clusters are emerging. And we've been able to use that data to direct investment, so £160 million from the UK government for the investment zone, for example, into some areas that we know are either already delivering real potential strength or are emerging. So we've been able, because we've got that real strength of data and intelligence, we've been able to take some bets, some fairly substantial bets around supporting emerging clusters, for example. So things like our returning maritime sector in Glasgow, our historical great strength, what Glasgow was known for around the world, which we then lost, but which is growing again and is coming back. Space and space manufacturing, I think now very well known that Glasgow is a global leader in fact, certainly a European leader. But also semiconductor packaging, for example, emerging as a real strength, not necessarily a kind of household name kind of sector, doesn't necessarily capture the imagination, but we know is going to be incredibly important for a whole number of industries over time. And that kind of intelligence that we've got has allowed us to direct the investment that either we have available in the city and city region already, or we're now increasingly being given by government, because they see that we are able to deliver effective strategic investment that is delivering returns and that is positioning businesses to be able to then attract that private sector investment to leverage in venture capital, for example. And so that's what we are really focusing on. In a few weeks, I'm going down to speak at a conference about superclusters with the vice chancellors of Oxford and Cambridge. I don't know, I'm going to be on a panel with them. I don't know, I'm going to have to bring my A game because I'm going to feel slightly
I think they'll learn a lot, Susan.
On with the vice principals of Oxford and Cambridge. But Glasgow's been invited, along with Oxbridge, you know, which everybody knows is that absolute world-class supercluster kind of capital within the UK, because we are increasingly developing that reputation of being really smart, really strategic about investment in a way that is delivering those real-world benefits and leveraging in external private sector investment for businesses, whether they're emerging or growing businesses right across the city region.
Thank you so much, Susan. And as I was trying to say, I think they'll learn a lot from being on the panel with you. So I look forward to that. James, the question was, what kind of investment is being brought? And I know you're bringing some investing partners. Tell us a bit about what the investment is that you're bringing to the table.
There's obviously an investment in the building. That's one part, but the much bigger part, the much bigger long-term part is investment into those businesses. And, you know, for the region, for the UK, it's really important how we think about that. We've achieved such low levels of growth for such a long period of time since we set up. We've been averaging 1.5% of growth, a significant proportion of which is just simply more people. It's not productivity growth, whereas the green economy worldwide, new report by the London Stock Exchange came out very recently, has been averaging 15% growth and is now worth $8 trillion. That is indicative of the level of investment, business investment, and most of this is business investment, it's not public sector investment worldwide, is significant. What we haven't been doing is ensuring enough of that is in the UK and in Scotland and in Glasgow. So the question is, how do we get more of that? We're a small part of that. We have our own investment funds. We've made 54 pre-seed investments, and we continue to do that, a number of which...
And that's your own investment fund?
Our investment funds. So we take, at different stages, we've got high net worth individuals' money. We invest it for them at the pre-seed and seed stage now. And we also are just waiting for final sign-off on a Series A/B fund, so we can do slightly larger investments, all early stage stuff. And really,
so do you take a position in the companies that come into the building and then you help them through their stages?
We have distinct models. So we have a workspace model, a business support model around consulting for corporates and for the public sector, and we also have investment, all distinct but all interrelated and self-reinforcing. And really, with the investment side of things and the support we use from that consulting side of things, and it's much more important, is the other investors we co-invest with. So we have around 200 other co-investors, many of them specialists, internationals, these corporates from all over the world. They can be specialist investors in the UK, and they will follow on. They'll do Series A, B, C, D, beyond, and that's a much significant, more significant amount of money. And the companies that we've supported, more generally, not just invested in, is getting close to about 1,000 now, and the money they've raised is in the billions, and that's really what we want to be bringing in.
So again, it sounds like you're bringing an investment ladder, and you're also bringing an investor community with you, and that sounds really helpful.
Absolutely, and you know, we've got representation from them here today. One of our closest partners is Barclays, and they have invested in multiple other businesses in our ecosystem through their £500 million fund. It's just a great example of the kind of partners that we ensure are part of this.
What's not to like? It feels like it's the statement. There's a comment from somebody in the room that says this is a comment rather than a question. The lighthouse does seem like a great fit for this project. So thank you very much to whoever said that. James, a couple of sort of quick technical questions for you. Will you work in collaboration with existing players in the other local innovation ecosystems where sustainable ventures is already involved? Will there be a connection with the County Hall community, for example?
I mean, hopefully that's one of the things that we can bring. It's very entrepreneurial-led. There are all sorts of different ecosystem networks, but we originally set up as entrepreneurs building our own businesses, many of which have scaled in Scotland and beyond. We bring that element and we bring the network that comes with that. So we've got touch points with, there's about 5,000 plus climate tech startups in the UK. We know most of them, but we've only supported about 1,000 of them. So we're able to sort of act as a conduit to that. And it means, you know, so many of the Scottish businesses that we've worked with and that we support, it's inevitable you have to go to London, get money. You know, cities like Glasgow and Manchester often started off by get some money, come back, build the city. And it's certainly indifferent today, apart from you sort of fly around the world as well. So hopefully we can help with some of that. And then within the UK, not just from an investment perspective and moving people around, but also, you know, a lot of our businesses in different parts of the UK, Scotland's the most important market they have. It's where the largest amounts of energy are generated. It's where the skill base is around those activities. So how, as they scale and they raise money in other places, and particularly London, we can then help them open up second offices, make investments, create other hubs in Scotland, as well as the reverse, is a really important factor.
Wonderful. Susan, there's a really interesting question here about how this will complement other developments that are already happening in the city, the innovation districts, in particular the Smart Things Accelerator somebody here has mentioned, and the other local innovation ecosystems. How do you see all of this fitting together? Is there a kind of master plan, or is it all organic? How do you see it?
A bit of a combination of the two. So there is a master plan in terms of how connecting innovation in place in Glasgow, and I think that's something that we do very well. And create almost that kind of virtuous circle where we have this great innovation-led economy, knowledge-led economy, which is which reputation is growing globally all the time, and we're also able to use that to drive the regeneration of place and the repurposing of place as well. We all know that city centres are looking for new purpose post-COVID. Glasgow City Centre needs that more than most because historically we have been a depopulated city centre and a city centre of fairly narrow use. We've been focusing since before COVID on changing that. We're growing the city centre population rapidly. We've got a lot of buildings in the city centre. The lighthouse is a particularly striking example, but there are a lot of buildings in the city centre, former office space, for example, or former retail space, but particularly former office space that needs a new purpose. And so bringing innovation and bringing the startups and spin-outs and entrepreneurialism into the heart of our city centre, to sit alongside people living in our city centre as well as working in more traditional office spaces and shopping and leisure and culture, and making it a genuinely vibrant, multi-use city centre, which is also one that we know will be more resilient, will be more sustainable when the next economic shock comes along, and we can probably assume it will be when rather than if. That absolutely is a strategy. That is a really clear strategy and master plan And we're already exceeding our targets for repopulating the city centre of Glasgow, to the point where, you know, my colleagues, I was talking to one of my colleagues the other day, who is a councillor for the city centre ward in Glasgow, and he already has more constituents than some MPs, because we're growing the population of the city centre so rapidly. But in terms of how, you know, which particular buildings, that is organic and opportunistic to a certain degree as well. If we can find the right partner, we can find, you know, if somebody comes along and says, we need a space, and we're willing to take on a building that maybe needs a bit of extra work, that maybe needs a bit of retrofitting and repurposing, because we want to be part of that regeneration of place, then perfect. You know, we'll make the match. And as I say, there's lots and lots of opportunities there to meet those collaborations as and when they emerge, as and when people are looking for them, but also as we are pitching them and selling them to people who are coming to locate in the city.
Wonderful. And I, for one, really support this initiative to grow the population in the city centre. It's the thing that's been missing, I think, for a long time. Now, we've got a lot of questions coming in, so I'm propose a bit of rapid fire. There's 2 questions for you, James, then there's 3 for you, Susan, okay? And some of yours are on slightly broader agendas, as always. So, James, the 2 for you is, how can local businesses support this tech cluster and the Lighthouse development? What do you want from the members of Glasgow Chamber of Commerce? What do you want from the small businesses in the city to help make this work?
The basic answer is to be part of it. But specifically, there will be opportunities in the supply chain, the development of the building, for people to help with that. Clearly, we're going to have a strong emphasis on the kind of sectors that are most relevant. That covers quite a few things. And when we've been doing this previously, we've always worked very closely to bring those organisations in through various programmes, interventions, innovation competitions around particular thematic areas. So, for example, in partnership with Lambeth and the Mayor of London, we brought together a lot of the anchor institutions, a lot of the organisations that were located around us to try and solve their problems using the innovators that were adjacent to them. And we can do that, I think, again here, quite easily in them. Really to see the things that we're building as a platform. So when we're doing the fit out of a space, it's not your typical fit out. You know, we've used previously 50 different types of sustainable materials that we've specified in quantities that those organisations have never been bought from before. Typical developer would never do that, but we'll take the risk and we'll help them go up TRL levels to do that. So there'll be all sorts of opportunities. We've been running our first programme in Scotland. It was a national programme, national funded programme, partnership with Barclays Eagle Labs, but focused on Glasgow. And it's been the best programme that we've ever run from a quality perspective out of 20 plus programmes. We won 10 at any point in time. The quality's been exceptional for regional, local businesses. And we will try and use those technologies in the work that we do here.
This sounds fantastic, James. And actually, you've anticipated the second question, which was, what support will there be to help businesses scale up? Will there be, for example, help with going from proof of concept to mid-sized manufacturing, circular economy? What sort of assistance will be available?
So we're involved in a range of different types of business support, economic development projects and programs. They take all sorts of forms. We've always historically referred to them as beer map to exit. So some of them are focused very much on the scale-up end. Some are for some people just starting out. All of those are undertaken in collaboration. So I know there was a sort of question before about how you integrate with other key regional innovation assets. We're working extremely closely. One of the reasons we're here is the work that Glasgow City Innovation District and the University of Strathclyde have done. We're working increasingly and trying to work increasingly closely with the University of Glasgow and the work that's coming out of there, so, and other partners, and there's always collaborations between the academic, corporate, investors like ourselves and specialist support. So how do you combine those things together?
Great, wonderful. Now, in a couple of minutes, I'm going to ask you both what the key next steps are. But Susan, there's quite a few other issues to raise with you first. There's a few here, so we may want to do them quite quickly. Will people still get access to the viewing platform at the Lighthouse?
So the plans that James and his team have drawn up, yes. Short answer is yes. We know that there are some key features of the Lighthouse that are much valued by people in the city. So, yeah, absolutely. The plans are cognizant of that. And as the capital works are done, they will take into account the ability of the city to still enjoy the fact that this is an asset, a key historical building. It will be put to a particular use, but that particular use will be very, very respectful of its history and the fact that it's a much loved building.
Great, wonderful. Now there was another question about how we can connect this to other points, particularly around the River Clyde. And there was a suggestion, can this be one of many? And can we make better use of the river in all of this? And in particular, any initiatives to bring back the river taxi or the water taxi?
So if I had £1 for every time I've been asked about that water taxi,
yes.
We would not have any budget deficits in Glasgow City Council.
Yeah.
So there is an issue around water taxi, and I would be very much in favour of it. But it's not in the City Council's control. The city doesn't actually own the river itself. You'll be
bit of a surprise for people.
Yes. What we have been doing, and I referred to earlier, is building bridges, literally building bridges across the Clyde. So the river is, I think it's fair to say, it is absolutely at the heart of our plans for Glasgow, and the land along the river. We describe within the economic development team in Glasgow and in the city region, we talk about the Clyde River corridor as being the biggest unrealised development opportunity in Europe.
Yep.
And we are pitching that unrealised development opportunity to both governments right now. We are saying if you're up for growth and you're saying you want to do growth, this place more than any other in these islands has the capacity to deliver genuinely inclusive growth as well, because the levels of deprivation and poverty among the communities that are within 500 metres of the river also gives us enormous potential to really drive equity as well as the regeneration and transformation of place. So the river is absolutely at the heart of our plans. James mentioned Barclays earlier, and you'll know that amazing new Barclays campus. In the space of 5 years, that space went from being basically a dead zone in Tradeston of unused warehouses to an amazing new space with 2,500 jobs in that new campus, new homes, public space, utter transformation. We could do that dozens of times over along the river corridor. I'm not saying we're going to do it in the next couple of years, but we are definitely really focused on using the river and the land roundabout the river as part of that innovation-driven transformation of place that I referred to earlier.
Could I maybe just build on that,
sure.
just to help bring to life? Now, I'm not sort of projecting into the future, if you will. What we've seen a lot of, and obviously Lighthouse is very, very close to the city centre as you could possibly get, and that's always been important for us to bring people together. And when organisations are just starting off, they need to be close to everyone. They need to be close to the UK, if not European, leading density of wind developers, for example, are in Glasgow city centre. Yeah. But when they get to a certain point, the businesses that we work with, they'll typically have to move out of the city centre, or at least the manufacturing and the physical elements that they do. We've seen it time and again in London, where in the city centre, get to a certain point, move to one direction out, Could be Reading, Slough, industrial estates. And there's no kind of coordination to that. It's just random places, and they lose that agglomeration. So there is definitely an opportunity to do something around that. We've also seen it not just in the southeast, but where we've got some of the best businesses, best scale-ups in the UK, not being able to find a manufacturer, and then finding, so there's one in particular that works in seaweed and was needed to produce 15 million units of seaweed material for single-use plastics. It's a nerve shot winner. And they couldn't find anyone to do this. And then by doing a scout across the whole of the UK, they finally found a stamp manufacturer that was not unsurprisingly struggling because people don't buy stamps anymore. And actually this old traditional 200-year-old manufacturer had 2 sites. One's in Scotland, and they just closed that because the business was failing, and they had one left near where I'm from, just south of Manchester. And they've completely revitalised that organisation, totally. So there is that opportunity, I think, in Glasgow to do that close to the city centre in a way that there isn't in most places.
Yeah, that's quite unique. Very important point, and I couldn't agree with you more, Susan, about the Clyde. We need to be really quick now because we're right out of time. Is there any news on the tram?
So the Metro, the Clyde Metro, of which tram may be one particular mode within it. I can tell you that SPT are making really good progress on developing the business case that will sit behind the bid for investment to actually deliver that. Right now, really rapid progress around that. What I'm keen to do is to speak to both the governments. Both UK and Scottish governments have right now a pitch with them, sitting with them for a devolution deal for the Glasgow metropolitan region. The Clyde Metro is absolutely at the heart of that. I would argue that there is no infrastructure project on the table right now in the UK that has the capacity to deliver and drive inclusive growth and again, transformation of place in the way that the Clyde Metro has. So we are actively out there looking for that backing from governments so that we can then leverage in private investment, and I would hope be able to show people a plan for delivery, starting delivery over the next decade, with then further decades to complete a network of which tram or light rail, whatever you want to call it, is likely to be part of a range of modes that will make up that whole network.
Great, thank you so much. Now, we've run out of time to do the other questions, but let me ask you the final one from me. What's the key next step on this partnership together? So, Susan, what's the key next step for you?
So I think the Council, we are very close to finishing the negotiation on the heads of terms, I think. So we want to do that. That's a pretty crucial step. Yeah. And we're also talking to partners that we want to bring in and get round the table as well, like some of the national agencies, for example.
Great. James, what's the key next step for you?
So you completely agree with Susan's comments there, but also really drill down into what competitive advantages the region has in particular areas so that we can tell a narrative around it, so we can show a full supply chain. Ultimately, the UK is tiny on the global stage now, but there are some things we're exceptional at. We need to focus on those, we need to build on them, and we need to pull all the partners around those ones. And I think you mentioned, the likes of GB Energy. There are some really exceptional businesses here, and that's the next step that we're going to go through.
Well, this is such an exciting initiative, and I'm sure we want to hear more about it next year at COB, perhaps, and hear how the progress is going. But meanwhile, let's say thank you to James Byrne and to Councillor Susan Aitken, leader of the city. Thank you very much.